want to thank everyone for joining me as I welcome Francisco Salguero. He is the Chief Information Officer at the Federal Communications Commission. He's a head MMA coach for a local martial arts school, which I think is awesome. And he's someone I've known since we were both at USDA Food Safety Inspection Service 12 years ago. So thank you for joining me here today, Francisco.
Thank you, Jeremy. Happy to be here.
So for those who don't know you like I do, tell us a bit about who you are, where you come from, and what you do.
Sure, absolutely. So Francisco Salguero again. So last name is Salguero, if you do a Spanish pronunciation. So obviously I'm of Latin descent. Parents are from Central America, El Salvador and Honduras. Basically born and raised in the DC area. So born in DC, raised in Springfield, Virginia, Alexandria, Virginia. Actually went to Thomas Edison High School and really grew up in this area. Also lived in Houston, Texas for a little bit during my tenure with El Paso Energy. As a Chief Information Officer for the FCC, really responsible for all aspects of IT, strategically and tactically to move us forward.
Interesting. So how did you get into IT, right? I mean, you're born and raised DC, that's great. What made you think IT was the career you're going to choose?
It's an interesting story. So I have to say, when I was going to college, I actually took my first computer class and I hated it. It was not a class nor course that I enjoyed at all. So I was actually a psychology major, and I was going to George Mason University, and at the same time funds were getting low, so I had to get a job. So I got a full-time job as a customer service rep at Telco Communications. So I would go to school during the day, and the evenings I start my shift there as a call center, answering calls, and because I was a fluent Spanish speaker, I got an extra 50 cents an hour. And so really that was kind of my initiation to the working world as while going to school at the same time. And I kind of fell into IT. We had an opportunity because it was a startup organization. So there was a lot of opportunities for us to help out in various ways. And so as I recall, Henry Lucan was one of the co-owners, and he was obviously a very smart, adept computer whiz guy under Shoe Telecom, and as he would need special projects and would just show us how different things work. And I recall a Novell network, and he would show us how to just route things and actually run it through the system. And I got into projects working on building systems, and actually got a full-time job. And the opportunity when that came up, I was actually still going to school. I was actually in my junior year of college. And then it was at that time during the telecom and .com, during the whole big boom in the early mid-90s. And when they said, well, we'd like for you to start as a regulatory and rates specialist. So I had an opportunity to not only look at the regulatory side of telecom, but also work on the billing system. And so that was kind of my first introduction, if you will, into IT. And then MS Access databases, Excel spreadsheets. And so I started to tinker and play around with that and develop my own applications using Microsoft Access, but at the time I thought it was an application. I thought it was kind of cool. And so what I found is I actually enjoyed IT when my hands-on, as opposed to sitting in the classroom. When I was doing hands-on work, I actually understood it more, and it just kind of clicked all together. And so working full-time and now in the telecom industry versus going to school, I kind of took an opportunity and said, okay, do I really need to focus on my career, or do I want to focus on school? And at that point, being young and dumb sometimes, it's like, okay, let me just stick to this work thing because it's kind of fun. And I make, a lot of money because I was making $32,000 a year, which was so great. But at that point, so I decided to take a pause on school. And just from there, my career just started to flourish a little bit. Working now specifically in IT, I took an opportunity to become the billing manager. And that was my introduction into the billing system, into a DOS-based billing system, which was kind of rudimentary if you think about it in today's world, but it helped me understand the nuts and bolts of IT. And as a startup organization, again, you had the opportunity to work not just on that activity, but any other projects, whether it's pulling cables, running networks, understanding how all of that worked, which was great. So, over the years, had various opportunities, stayed in the telecom industry and IT, and then actually had a great boss, Paul Roberts, when I was at then another company, Net Telecommunications, we had an opportunity to build his own IT team and take him down to Houston, Texas, working for El Paso Energy as they started a telecom branch. So from there, while we moved from here, we just recently married, and actually my wife was pregnant. And so at that point, we decided to move anyway. It was a great opportunity. And I recall that as I was going, working, and then as my son was born, realizing, hey, you know what, I never finished school. And how can I tell my son he has to do school when I didn't even take, the opportunity to finish? So I went back into school and changed from a psychology major now to a computer into IT systems, and finished my degree there, which was great because I definitely wouldn't have had the opportunity that I have today without finishing that degree. But I had a little bit of a head start when I finally got to classes. I felt, well, I already know what they're talking about. Made it a little bit easy, I have to admit. But that's, I guess, my introduction, long side of the story for IT. And then just my career from there, eventually just came back into the DC area. Got an opportunity to work for Food Safety Inspection Service, as you mentioned, where we met. And that's how I got into the federal government over 15 years ago.
I didn't realize that was your first government job.
Yeah, it was first government job. And so I had a little stint with SCIC right before starting, where I worked with local and state governments on law enforcement systems. So I had worked with government, but not at the federal level yet. So there was just small NCIC work with FBI and law enforcement.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So having been in government now and having been in IT now for quite some time, all right, we're both a little bit grayer than we were when we were at food safety. What's something that you think would be a valuable change to make? If somebody gave you the power for the day to say, hey, we need to change just how we do something in IT, what is it you think would be a valuable reset for us?
So I'm not sure if I would call it a reset, but just rethinking of IT as being much more partners with the business and the programs, and start thinking about how we can leverage current technology, not in the traditional development of applications and systems and just solutions where we kind of take things, and we're still IT, and in people's mind, our value comes in what we can produce, and it's like the Wizard of Oz. We have to do it behind the curtain.
Right.
And really take the opportunity to leverage some of their newer technologies. And I think from a government perspective, have to understand, just because we don't physically touch it or own things like a data center, it doesn't mean we're not still needed. We are needed. And I think that's some of the fear some folks have when it comes to newer platforms and technologies. There's a kind of an apprehension to move forward because I don't want to adapt and use, let's say, some sort of software as a service platform because I'm a coder, and I want to get away from leveraging my Java skills. When in actuality, your skills are more of thinking about how to get to a solution as opposed to actually coding and knowing the bits and bytes. As a government entity, really our solutions, our goal is to help the citizens and making sure we are doing it in a way that is as fast as industry is in the private sector as in the public sector. Sometimes we are further behind because we have an apprehension to take on newer technologies. Now, we also have to make sure we're doing it securely. We're following all the regs and following all the requirements that we need to from all the different levels: privacy, security, making sure the accreditation is there. So it's not about curtailing any of those, needs, but it's more so how can we take those, even some of the regulations that are from 1980 and making them work for us in 2020, right? Because sometimes we're hindered from either a budget process or some other process that we control ourselves more than we give our own selves credit for. We say we can't do something because our process is such and such. As opposed to think about, well, okay, do I need to change that process, or do I have the power to modify that process and still meet the requirements and needs of not only the users, but also for the citizens and the regulations that we have to follow.
That's so true. And yeah, I will echo your statement on the apprehension we have in the IT field, especially in government. I think you're right. There's the apprehension of the change that could, we say, oh, we're gonna no longer be needed, or our skills are no longer be needed. But you and I have food safety. We did that whole data center consolidation, and we didn't lose a single job, right? I mean, there was still such a
Exactly.
necessary need for administration. So
Absolutely.
yeah, and people say the same thing about AI, right? They're all concerned AI is going to put me on a job. Well, no, somebody's still got to control all that stuff. Somebody's got to put it in place. Somebody's got to understand it, and then, like you said, I think craft it for the business solution, right? It doesn't come out of the box ready to serve a business user. There's somebody's got to be in between there.
Right. Right. It's sometimes also educating our users, right? Because sometimes they say, I want a solution to say, I have a green button today. I want it to be green tomorrow. And we did every requirement that's given to us, we say we're going to meet 100%. And we're so busy trying to meet their needs as opposed to giving them alternatives that may be better.
That's right.
And that may be much more efficient in processing everything, especially when you look at the technologies, when you're leveraging, the fact that, okay, maybe I can't make it a green button, but I can make it a blue button, and I can process your data more efficiently or more transparently.
That's a good point. Yeah, the education side for our customers as well, and in terms of understanding technology or trusting us, right? Trusting us to provide them the best, most efficient solution that's going to meet their requirement, but in a way that also meets, all of our other things we got to do from an IT and from a security perspective.
Exactly, because the education is critical. Because sometimes you'll get users that don't understand technologies. Other times you may get users that are consumer technology savvy, right? Mm-hmm. And so there's a nuanced detail, right? I'm not talking about technology savvy. I'm talking consumer technology savvy. Those are the folks that may read articles, may look at commercials, right? They understand the trends, they understand what's going on, but the nuanced details, how to get there, is not fully understood. So we have to help educate them, let them know, okay, this is how we can get there, but understand we still have to meet our requirements from a security. Again, I just can't say it enough. So security just plays an integral role into what we do.
No, that's so true. So where do you see, yourself? Where do you see your career going? I mean, you've kind of reached, in my opinion, the CIO position is a big goal for a lot of people if they go the management track, right, and leadership. But where do you see yourself going in the future, or where do you see, federal IT going into the future?
Well, that's a heavy question, right? So let me take the second one.
Okay.
I'll go with the second one. So as far as government IT, I think this year has been critical as far as I'm trying to say this in a way that doesn't sound so bad, right? But in a way, it's unfortunate that we're in this pandemic, but at the same time, it's enabled us to showcase what we can do with IT. Mm-hmm. So I think what we're going to hopefully see, I see, is the opportunities where, remote workers become more of a norm, as opposed to where an outlier of, well, I can't hire so-and-so because they're not in this area, or I can't see their face every day. When you talk about, I need a developer, a coder, or, a security person, well, how often do you actually need to have that person sitting right in front of you, right? In today's environment, ability to have remote workers is much more there than ever before. I think there's more of an appreciation for that. So I think it will open up more doors and opportunities, not only for IT folks to get into the federal government, but also see opportunities open up for the rest of the organizations and the environment within the federal government, period. Because what we'll see is where, especially here in the DC area, as we're very heavy as far as, hey, we got to have somebody in the office so they can meet so-and-so. And now having a virtual meeting as we're having, right, through video conferencing, it's much more important. And if, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, us doing a video conference might happen when we do it at home, but in the office, it wasn't necessarily something that people were thinking about, unless they would do a big room and have, okay, this is a specialized conference room. but to have your own private sessions was not really something people thought about. And I think now it's much more there. And the emergence of video technology and other things like that, again, goes to bandwidth. So the needs of IT are just going to continue to grow with 5G also getting there. So now you can get that in remote areas more so than what you can get today. And earlier we were talking about, this pandemic, you find out people have at home or may not have at home. So as technology continues to evolve and folks are less burdened by having technology in their homes, I would see the opportunities within government IT also continue to grow as well. So remote offices become more of a norm. I think centralization of people, whether in the DC area or outside of the DC area, is not going to be as prevalent or as required as it has been in the past.
That's a really good point. Yeah, I know, like for my agency, we recently awarded a contract with them last year for our operations and service desk, and for the first time ever, we did it in a way where it's a shared desk, but it's not even in the DC area. It's Blacksburg, Virginia, or whatnot, and it reduced our costs by a lot. So yeah, there's an opportunity. I think there's a cost opportunity there for federal IT.
Absolutely, absolutely, and for citizens in general, right? Because now we can actually extend our capabilities out to folks at rural areas that need these type of jobs, right? So those demands aren't going to be just in the urban areas. It's going to be provided for all the citizens to be able to be involved.
That's a great idea. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, anything else you want to share while we're here today before we end?
No, Jeremy, this is pretty cool. I appreciate you reaching out and giving me the opportunity to kind of share a little bit of my story. It's this, as you mentioned, I didn't think of myself ever being in a CIO position. That's not just something I thought about. But to be in this type of opportunity today and over the last few years, having been at USDA as the deputy CIO, it's been great. And so I definitely would encourage folks to look at IT as a potential career, because it's not just about the bits and bytes anymore. It's also understanding project management. It's about understanding what the user experiences are. So artists are very much needed, as well as those, us geeks that be behind the keyboard.
That's a good point. Well, thank you again, Francisco. I look forward to talking to you again in the future.
Sounds great. Thanks, Jeremy.